Jay Baba, thank you. Jay Baba. This is a wonderful honor to be at this special time with this special group. It's not easy to come out anymore, is it? Tonight is a special night, and one where we'll see, and I think we'll be able to convey, both by story and by film, what perhaps in the Christian world would have been called the crucifixion followed by the resurrection. And an event that turned into a great celebration, a great, as Mani had said, a great adoration, and a phenomenon which will probably go down in history as extraordinary. So tonight I want to thank you for the invitation. This Marabot is beautiful now. It's a wonderful place. It has wonderful history. I have incredible memories from 50 years or so from here. And as you'll see in a minute, it's played a large part in some of the work we were doing that led up to 1968 and gave us a few hints about what was going to happen. Now, we are on video tonight. I do want to say something to the Baba lovers in 2050. Now, those of you who are historians in 2050 understand that on January 30th, and this is 2018, in American political history, it is also the night of the State of the Union. We're not watching that. We're going to consider the state of the universe. Anyway, now, and I will try. I'll try, Lois, to keep our original schedule. I think we can do that.
And don't worry, we got it.
I know. Breaks are important. I also, in telling my story, I need, including the people in 2050, I need to give a disclaimer. And that is, you know, my memory is not as good as it has once been. Not even, I know that. It's wild to imagine that. And also, I find that every time I give a talk, my previous talks have been more dumb than the one I did. So, any errors in memory, in understanding, in theology, or metaphysics, please excuse them. You can yell out afterwards in the break, no, that's not how it happened. I also apologize for using the word I too much. Now, all of us intuitively know that I is not real. And occasionally, I really get that feeling. So when I say I, it's the person, I'm describing the personality's experience. I hope not to believe that it's real. Okay. All right. Now, I want to give you some context of the time, because it kind of flowed into what was going to be a very unexpected trip to India. 1968. Now, it's interesting. When I met Lois, who was Blanche at that time, yes. And was the Queen and Inspirational Girl of the Year for religious science in California. That was just before things started to happen, June 1968. Now, some of you know that during that period, I and Rick Chapman, Robert Dreyfus, and others were involved in pretty intense work on the drug issue. But remember that Bob had asked us to spread the word that LSD was not about to get you to God, and tell the American public about it, and to go on radio and television and spread the message including quoting him, the Avatar, which at that time was not easy. People were not endeavoring. The word guru had not hit. The word karma, nobody knew it. Nobody knew it. Not to mention the avatars, who they all now talk about on the internet. So it was a tricky time, but there was a lot of miraculous occurrences. I'm not going to tell all the stories here, but I want to tell one because it's linked to Los Angeles. There were two very, very important things that happened. In one publicly in LA, which was a show called The Joe Pine Show, which, as some of you may remember, was very, very popular, was syndicated, and he was famous for destroying his guests, which means that producers were glad to have us on. We'll talk about a man who had not spoken for 45 years. He was going to kill us. We went on the show preceded by an interview of an African shaman who brought snakes and other animals and was really bonkers. And he was killed. There was an audience of about 400 people. So that was the start. So we come on, and we were a little nervous, I have to say. See what Bob would be up to, but we're going to get the message across no matter what. And then, just as the show was starting, believe it or not, a white dove flew from the ceiling of the theater we were in and landed right on the panel, that we were being interviewed. Turned out the white dove was an escapee from the African shaman's collection. However, we thought it was a good sign. It was a very good sign. And then later, they whipped out there was a UCLA graduate student who was very good looking, very well speaking, and he was going to destroy our argument about LSD. He gets up and faints on camera. There's chaos in the studio. And the producer runs out and says, "This will be an object lesson for millions." And we went to, actually Rick and I went to see if we could help the guy. And he awakened and he had a big grin on his face. He said, "What happened?" His wife was there, no explanation whatsoever. That became a very popular show. And we had a chance to talk about MeherBabaLibrary, and Rick talked about his meeting of Baba. That was here. That was in LA. Now, I can't pass up the story that relates to George's catechism song. Because, again, it involves MeherBaba's roots. So, I'm on a plane from Rochester, New York to St. Louis, and I'm in a bad mood. Yes, I was in a bad mood. I was grumpy. Sat down on the seat, and you know who sat next to me? Is a college co-ed who had never flown before. And she wanted to engage in conversation. I didn't want to. She said, "What is this thing?" I said, "It's a seatbelt." "What do you do with it?" "You put it on." That was not my best frame of mind. So I'm sitting there trying to ignore it. She says, "You know who's on this plane?" I think, not like today, it's Fidel Castro. What? No. Bishop Fulton Sheen.
Oh my gosh.
Those of you who are old enough. Not many. Well, remember that Bishop Fulton Sheen was very famous because he had his own television show. And it was a network show on basically Catholic theology. But he was so good, he was such a great speaker, so intelligent, that people loved it. And he had just gotten in trouble with the church for giving away property of the church in the Rochester Archdiocese. He had been the head of the department, the protector of the faith for the church. So I said, "Are you sure he's on the plane?" "Yes." Now I'm thinking, this is a guy who knows the secrets. church, right? Maybe he knows something about mysticism. Nah. Maybe you should learn about Baba. Nah. Then there was this big dialogue between my superego and my ego. Superego says, "You really look. There's a chance he's on television. You should know about that the Christ is back." The voice says, "Not his Christ." No. You're making an ass of yourself. No. The other said, "No, don't you think I should really try?" "What are you going to do?" The ego says, "You go up to him and says, uses his back. I thought you'd like to know." He says, "Well, really, it's an opportunity." The other person says, "Look, it's not even courteous to bother the guy." Well, so finally, the intuitive part said, okay, I'll do it. I know I'll do it. I know he's concerned about public health and young people. I'll just give him this book. I'll give him the God in the Pill book. Just rip up and find him to split. So I was trying to find him. And on TV, he's 6'4", jet black hair, very commanding looking. When I found him, he was 5'3", with gray hair, sitting in economy. So I went up the aisle. So okay, Bishop Sheen, I'm a psychologist. I work with kids and about the drug problem here. I thought you might be interested in this. He says, "Oh, how interesting. Why don't you sit down?" I said, "Sit down?" Okay, sit down. And I liked him immediately. He was a very, very sweet man. And we had a conversation about youth and about things like that. And I figured this is fine. And then he looks at me and says, "What do you think we should do about the church?" What? Thinking to ask you this Jewish guy sitting in the street, but you just know what you're going to do about the church? And be more honest with him. He nodded. And then I said, "Look, I gotta find out. I gotta find out what he really knows." I said, "I'm going for it." I knew I was not going to get an answer. I said, "The other thing is, I think it's time for the church to bring back reincarnation." I said, "I think heaven and hell has served, purpose." But, young people are finding it to be a little unjust. If they only live once and things aren't going well. So, I knew he was not going to answer me because he was too nice. But I could see in his eyes. So I wondered. And so I said that piece, and he looked at me and he smiled, and his eyes twinkled. Saying, "Yeah, I get it. I know if I'm not going to tell you." He said, "Well, perhaps I should do a TV show on mysticism." Then he had been reading a book, and the book was on violence and nonviolence. I was feeling good now, so I handed him the discourses. Yes, I did. Yes. Handed the discourses. He flipped it open, and I heard him say, "Oh my." Much more, and be more honest with him. He nodded. And then I said, "Look, I gotta find out. I gotta find out what he really knows." I said, "I'm going for it." I knew I was not going to get an answer. I said, "The other thing is, I think it's time for the church to bring back reincarnation." I said, "I think heaven and hell has served, purpose." But, you know, young people are finding it to be a little unjust. If they only live once and things aren't going well. So, you know, I knew he was not going to answer me because he was too nice. But I could see in his eyes. But I wanted to. And so I said that piece, and he looked at me, he smiled, and his eyes twinkled. Saying, yeah, I get it. I know if I'm not going to tell you. He said, well, perhaps I should do a TV show on mysticism. Then he had been reading a book, and the book was on violence and nonviolence. Now, I was feeling good now, so I handed him the discourses. Yes, I did. Yes. Handed the discourses. He flipped it open, and I heard him say, oh my. He turned to the chapter saying, violence and nonviolence. Now, you say, what is the link to Los Angeles? Some of you know, in fact, some of you are going to correct me. It turns out that Phyllis Frederick also liked him very much and sent him a photo of Baba looking like Jesus.
Oh.
Not necessarily like that, but very close. And she got a reply from him. And it seemed like a nice, courteous reply. Dear Miss Frederick, thank you so much for the wonderful photo of our Lord. That's for a photo of our Lord? They didn't have cameras in Jesus' time. So I figured he got onto it. So George the Catechism was okay. Turns out, by the way, he is going to be, he's in line to become a saint in the Catholic Church as soon as they figure out where to put his bones. This is a bit of a controversy. Anyway, all of this is going on. At 68 is going on. Then, in late August, early September, I get an invitation from Pete Townsend in London to do a tour with him. No, not on guitar. A tour talking about LSD and doing media things and other appearances where he would show up. And I told my boss, I was then at the University of California Counseling Center, Berkeley, that I had to leave for 3 weeks. She said, this is when the students come. You gotta counsel on that. This is when they're choosing their courses. This is when they're freaking out. I said, yeah, but I really need to go. Well, I went, and I came back without a job. That's what happened. Basically, this is in September. So, kind of went full time on this thing. And at that time, I was corresponding. Rick and I were corresponding fairly frequently with Baba, even though he was in seclusion. And he was following all of this. So I went off to England, and I was staying with Delia, and a message came through from Erich. This is the 14th of September. Avatar Mayor Baba says he is very happy you are proclaiming his message of love in England through talks, television, radio. Stop. Baba sends his love blessing to you and says he is with you, Erich. And that helps with nerves, you know. It's very helpful. Later, I got a cable. I was reporting on what was going on. And Baba wrote through Erich, your report, London made beloved Baba very happy. May your Baba work with Baba joy. Then, the mystery that I was trying to solve tonight was Baba inquired whether you read the recent family letter. Now, I probably did, this was many years ago. I wonder if there was something in there now that related to this talk tonight. We still do not know, but it's a mystery, yes. So now we move into October. This is 1968. And we also visited Holland at that time. Got a cable saying your letter October, giving work report on visit England, Holland, made MeherBaba very happy. Baba says he was, is, and will be with you doing his work wholeheartedly. Baba sends his love to you. Then there was a very interesting note on the 3rd of November. We are moving towards January that year. He wanted Rick and I to convey a message to all the other kind of chief group people who were helping setting up a lot of the radio and television things, and also doing work on their own with regard to drugs and God, if you will. And we were supposed to send this message. You are dear to me, and I am pleased with the way you have come forward in my name and work. The time is here, and soon the world will know that I am the Ancient One. And Eric says, of course, the message applies equally to you and Rick and Bob Davis. In mid-November, we got a message from Erich and Francis saying, it is always a treat for the Mongoli to hear your, and this is to Rick, and dear Allan's work reports. And dear Francis remarked the other day that through the ultrasonic frequencies of his name, which you and Allan are broadcasting all over America, more and more hearts are being conditioned to receive the word of love and truth when he utters it. We're all here and send our best. Then Francis said that Baba had autographed a couple of copies of Stay With God and was sending it to Rick and I. Now, so we're fast forward to December. We had, news that Baba's health was not well, but we were all prepared for the spring darshan. It had been planned. And as a matter of fact, some planes were already being booked. So people were very, very anxious. Well, it was probably February 1st our time, we heard there was a rumor that Baba had dropped the body. And of course we didn't believe it. So it was not validated yet. So Rick and I decided to call Adi. So we called Adi in India. Now, you can imagine that the connection wasn't too good in those days. And here's what we heard. Adi, what happened? What happened? We heard, Baba is gone, but he's coming back. Now, there had been a report of a time when Baba had seemed to go into a coma for 24 hours. And people thought he had dropped the body at that time. So we thought that had happened again. Well, then the actual telegram came out about him dropping his body, and that he would be interred at the tomb, quickly. So what happened is that Rick and I and some others thought that this was going to be, and it was obviously a shock to the Baba world, but that Baba had kind of predicted this. So we went back in the family letters and other communications and picked out a lot of quotes that both intimated that his time was coming in some ways, and also that stressed him being God more than just a man, and talking about things like saying, like on the 13th of October, this is about the time he was writing this, Baba had said, "I've been saying the time is near, it is fast approaching, it is close at hand. The time has come, remember this." And he said, "Coming, coming, coming came. None of you can know what it means." He said, a few days later he added another one, making it, "Coming, coming, coming came. I am tired of the illusion game." We will see the monolith tonight, quoting that. Later after the break, we're going to see a film of the entombment, which includes an interview that Rick and I and Anise Hassan, cinematographer from San Francisco, took just after the entombment. And that kind of becomes significant. So we were up day and night collecting these things, getting into, this shows our age, mimeograph form. We're not talking Xerox here, folks. And sending it around. It was, I think, the days and the dates get a little foggy, but it was midweek, probably around February 3rd. And I was exhausted, but I had booked a television show in San Francisco. I was in Berkeley. It was going to be about marijuana. It was like 9 o'clock in the morning. I had to drive there. Just at about 7:30 in the morning, I get a phone call from Lud Dimphel. Lud Dimphel was a long-term Baba lover, had been at the 3 Weeks gathering, Sufi, San Francisco. And he said, "I just received a call from Don Stevens, who said that he heard from, that Adi had requested you to keep him apprised of your visa status."
Whoa.
He said, "What?" I said, "What? I have nothing more to say. I'm busy." I said, "Why would Adi want me to keep what visa status?" I don't have a visa. I thought it was bizarre. So I called Merchant Deuce and I said, "I got the strangest call." And she said, "Well, maybe I'll see if it's possible for you to go to India. If you go, I want Anise to go too." Anise was the film guy. And at first I was, "No, I'm not going to India." I mean, first of all, Mayor Baba had told us explicitly, a few of us, not to come to India until he called. Number one. Number two, his body was going to be interred any second. And number three, it never occurred to me. So then I called Rick and I told him. Rick said, "Well, if you go, I would like to go too." I said, "I'm not going." But that's nuts. You can't go. I mean, not only that, we happened, you know that India and Pakistan were at war at that time. Guess whose side America was on? Pakistan. No, he didn't like us at that time. In fact, I had heard that even Don Stevens had trouble. He was in the Commonwealth. He was in London at that time, getting to India. Anyway, I did the TV show, and I felt bad for both Rick and possibly Anise's enthusiasm about this trip that wasn't going to happen. So it turned out that the TV studio was not far from one of the international health centers. Now, in those days, boy, did you need a lot of shots to go to India. Boy. So I said, "Look, maybe I can save them trouble. I mean, there's no way they're going to get shots in time." Because in order, we knew they were going to day with Baba's entombment, though there had been some hint that if the body did not decompose, they were going to wait until his Zoroastrian birthday, which is 7th. So I went to the health department, and I went up to the county and I said, "Look, I've got some friends. There's an emergency in India. Can they get enough shots to qualify?" And the guy says to me, he says, well, what's your name? I said, my name is not relevant here. I'm inquiring about some friends. They need to go to India. He says, what's your name? I said, my name's Al, okay? Now, this is a critical question. I've got to call these people. And he says, what's your last name? I said, Cohen. He disappears. He comes back and he says, well, it turns out that you're scheduled for your last shots for India. I said, what? In those days, you had to have a series. So way back earlier that fall, those of us who were trying to go to the darshan got shots. And the guy insisted I get done. I said, I'm not going anywhere. He says, you would go back to work and step on a nail. Not really that probable. Okay. Can my friends calm down? Yes, if they hurry. So I call Rick and I call Rich to do something. Rich says, well, there is a plane you could get on that you might be able to get there. I've made reservations. I'm not going, but save some seats for Rick and me just in case. So then I thought, this is getting bad. My buddies, are getting all wired up about going to India. It's not going to be possible. So I said, I'm not far from the Indian consulate. That's going to be the thing. So I walk in to the consulate, and I know you can't get a visa, especially in India. And I said to the lady, my friends, you know my story by now. My friends have an emergency. They have to get on a plane to India tomorrow. Can we, is there any possibility of getting an emergency visa? And the lady, well, I am not so sure, but you have to fill out the application. I said, oh, it's actually not for me. You have to fill it out. I'm not going to answer. So, okay. I'll fill it out. I got to the item. Reason for coming to India. God has died. No. not really going to work. Tourist. So I give it to her. I said, this is the kind of application that my friends would put in, okay? Yeah, you stay here and talk to the council. So she comes back. And she looked a little puzzled. And she said, well, I don't know, but the council is approved. Approved. Well, I said, good, I'll send my friends down. She says, but one thing, you have to be here. We are closing in 3 hours. You have to be here with 6 passport photos. So, now my niece was living in the city, so he could get there. I called Rick. Rick said, I've already thought of that. So Rick said, I went to the photographer and I got the photo. And Rick said, a strange thing happened. That when I was leaving the photographer said, you happen to know a Dr. Allan Cohen? And Rick says, yes. The guy says, well, here's a dozen passport photos. You might need them. I said to Rick, what passport photos? I said, did you look at them? Was it me? He's like, yeah, it was you. I don't remember how to get here. It then dawned on me, I had to go to India to figure out the mystery. What was going on?
Yeah.
This is as close to a call as I was going to get. But I have to admit to you, Baba had hit a part of me that I would say was not the most devotional part, but it was the most curious part. I mean, if it was straight devotion, I probably wouldn't. I said, well, look, we've been in touch, Baba is everywhere, what's the big deal, right? Nah, wrong answer, but still, it could have happened then. But this way, the mystery was too wild. What did Ali know? what was going on? I had to find out. So the next day we hop on a plane, Rick and I and Luce, and we fly to India. We were met at the airport, not bubblers, and driven to Amartithi, which I thought during that trip we would never make it. It's been the first time driving in India, and there's no way we're going to survive. But we got there, and we washed up and we refreshed it. We were staying at Elu's, and they rushed us out. This would have been the 5th of February. And we got there, so they rushed us out to MeherBabaLibrary. And at that time, there were actually very, very few Westerners that made it to India. In all, there were only 8. When I got there, when Rick and I and Nish got there, Don Stevens was there, Delia DeLeon, Harry Kenmore. And then after we got there, Irwin and Ed Luck came on the last day. So, you know, they treated us very well. So we got to immediately go into the crypt. You'll see that film, and you'll see what it was like. But we were able to be there for that afternoon and almost all the next day, inside the crypt, when, you know, thousands of people went by. Now, I didn't know what to expect. You know, by that time, I began to get the feeling that maybe it wasn't a mystery. Maybe this was something bigger than a mystery. It was something I would never have been able to be close to. And I can tell you, the first time we went into the crypt, the first experience, it struck me like a thunderbolt. And it was a strange reaction in a way. But later I thought it was not so strange. And that was, I looked at Baba's body. I said, that's not MeherBabaLibrary. That's his costume. That's his dress. He is the avatar. He is everywhere. And that was an absolute, Adi Arani would say, conviction. Yeah. Absolute knowledge of that. And so it made the experience both remarkable but never sad, because it was so liberating to understand that. And it was interesting because of the Westerners there, only I had never met Baba in person. So later I kind of felt, again apologizing for the eye, that it was like a Barzak for the West, that Western lovers who had never met him, that it was a validation that we could love him as God, as the avatar, without having met him physically in form. And it was really, in a sense, and you'll see that in the film, much harder on the Mongoloid. Much harder. Because they experienced Baba as a man. Yes, they believed it was the avatar, but that's not how they really related to them personally. I mean, they had absolute conviction of who he was. But their experience was on the human level. And that was a terrible loss. As you'll see, their faith was never touched. They were really remarkable. Later on, when we see the film, I'm going to narrate it a little bit. Might be in bad taste because it's kind of a sacred, emotional kind of moment. to see the film of Baba in the Crypt. But you probably wouldn't get a narration of this anyplace else of somebody who was there. So we're gonna kind of stretch it a little bit here. But because I wanted to point out some things that happened with some of the characters. You will see that Baba's body was not decomposing. In fact, it was kind of looking better and better every day. There was dry ice, you'll see it surrounding it, flowers, and there was, Baba's head was tilted slightly. And later I'll read to you some dialogue. And you'll also see in the film the manga talking about the hint he gave in terms of giving the darshan reclining. And they couldn't figure it out at the time. Yeah, really? He asked Francis, do you think the Westerners would be okay if I, reclined? He said, sure, but one of them said, but they want to see your face, Baba, so they have you on a little slant. Right? And that was honored in the crypt, so Baba's head is a little bit raised. The thousands of Indians that went by was remarkable. I mean, the love that they had, the adoration, but the lack of tears. It was celebration. Some of the poorest of the poor came in and sang their hearts out. There were also some very interesting incidents. There was a Zoroastrian priest who talked against Baba a lot in town. And he had a dream the night before, and he had a dream of seeing Baba on a white horse. So he had to come out to the tomb to see what was going on. So he sneaks up, he doesn't get in line, sneaks up behind, he sees Baba's body tilt, his eyes open, and smile at him.
Whoa.
Freaked him out. He's a good Baba lover from that time out. At night, that was during the day. At night, so we stayed in the crypt. We were allowed to go down and touch Baba's feet. We were allowed to help. You'll see some people waving kind of a scarf or a fan. That was to keep, flies and other things away. It was very, very practical. We had an MC at the crypt.
No.
Yes, we did have an MC. Hoshan Barucha. Who was a wonderful Baba lover, great sense of humor. And he would kind of narrate who was passing by and their background and make jokes. I mean, it was paradoxical. The other thing I experienced was something I didn't figure out for 15 years. People said, well, what was it like being in the crypt with Baba's body? And for years I said, well, it was like there was nothing in the atmosphere. Nothing. No sanskara, no impression, nothing. I wasn't really happy with that description. Later I realized it was the silence. It was a perfect silence. And perfect peace. And yet, everything was still, it was almost like Baba was running the show. It was all practical too. Now when the mandali, particularly when the women mandali were allowed to be, in fact, were encouraged to be there alone, there were times, you'll see Mera and Mani. Mera was, of course, deeply, deeply touched. The men mandali were exhausted, but they were all terrific. And certainly by the time the actual entombment occurred, there were thousands and thousands of Indians there. And they handled it perfectly. Also, as you'll see in the film, the entombment ended with a kind of a box. You'll see this too, a box being put over the grave in the crypt. And what you won't notice is how funny it was. It was like Baba had continued a sense of humor. You could hear the Indians yelling at each other. No, don't do it that way. Move the ropes this way. It was just like the old days. Now there was a great amount of solemnity too. It was very, very, very powerful. And what you'll also see in the film is something that we really were not terribly proud of afterwards, because we were very thoughtless. But what happened was, Rick and I and Kenny sat around and said, after the Bob was finally placed in the tomb with the coffin, this is big. Historically, this is really big. This is like Jesus' crucifixion or something like that. And kind of said, posterity has to be able to see this. And we were struck by a television show at that time. We were all too young to remember it, called You Were There. And the show with Walter Cronkite. And the show featured like journalists who would go back in history, like interview Napoleon, and say, General Washington, how's the war going? That kind of thing. And we'd say, we've got to do that. We got to do You Were There. And so as the film that we'll see after the break, we grabbed them on Francis Mani Arajanati and interviewed them for what we thought would be a TV show for posterity. Now, when you see it, you'll realize we asked really dumb questions. Right? So don't feel too badly about that. We were trying to kind of be naive for the general public who needed to be introduced to the avatar. And it was terribly thoughtless, because God knows they were exhausted, they were tired, they were not feeling well, but they went. So we're going to see that. Another thing happened that is not recorded in the history books of the Lord Mayor, which was very interesting. I think it was later in the day after Baba was entombed, all the Mandali and the Westerners got together, and Mani said, well, the Indians had left, the visitors. I said, well, I guess we'll send a cable out and cancel the spring darshan. And Mani said, yeah, we got to do that. And Rick and I looked at each other. We had this mimeograph. We said, well, again, it was pretty arrogant. The couple of young American flakes saying to the disciples of the Avatar, let's rethink this. Well, we started reading some of these hints, and particularly stuff about doing the darshan reclining.
Yeah.
And within a half hour, everybody agreed, let's do it. So the darshan was on before people knew it was off.
Wow.
And we'll get a little taste of that too. So I think we returned to the United States in a couple of days afterwards, trying to integrate kind of our collective experiences. And Nice was able to. So part of the film you'll see was filmed by Nice Hassan. It would be the later part, obviously, because we came late. But we were able to go back to the States, and I think it was fair to say we could reassure everybody that, Baba had gone, but he came back immediately. And you could see that the mandali were still reacting to Baba's instructions. Not only his past instructions, but what he would have wanted at any particular time. Really, when we got back, we were able to see things like this, Bob saying things like this in a very different way. He would say, I am not this physical form. I am the ocean, the unlimited ocean of love. Try to love me more and more, and you will know me. I am not limited by this form. I use it like a garment to make myself visible to you. Without it, you could not see me. And I communicate with you through words best fitted to your understanding. If I used the language of my own consciousness, you would not know what I was talking about. So, there are enough mysteries left.
Could you repeat that?
Yes.
Could you repeat that last one?
The last line, if I used the language of my own consciousness, you would not know what I was talking about. So, if you can imagine, people don't appreciate the complexity of the nature of God's universe. If you think that, like neurochemistry, biology, cell structure, all these kinds of things are complicated, the internal chemistry of the body, think of how much more complicated the entire creation of the universe is. So, MeherBaba dumbed it down. He really did. God speaks is God 101. It isn't even halfway there. So, that's why I love his, I think it's the last or the second to last paragraph of God Speaks, which basically says, I just wrote this to keep your mind from convulsing. You can't understand God. You have to live God. You have to love God. And what this tipping point of, if you will, the first Amartithi of that time, or earlier when Baba said that my universal work is 100% done, and he's pleased with it. From a mystical interpretation, he said he was going to turn the world upside down. It's like the entire creation had moved from a period of evolution of consciousness to a period of involution of consciousness. And that really his job, his work as avatar is to raise the, if you will, the vibration of all matter and all consciousness towards fitting with the motivation of the original wind, which is who am I. And the interesting thing that he started talking about, which now we're just starting to interpret, is that the West, including LA, if not led by LA, was introducing a new form of spirituality, a totally new form. Not the old spirituality, which was Eastern, which was basically to associate your consciousness as well as you can with God and individually be freer and freer from illusion. That's yoga, that's old, I mean, it's real. It's what all the gurus have said, but it's the old spirituality where one had to, in fact, remove oneself from the world to be successful, or to remove oneself from involvement in the world. And if you see most of Baba's practical methodology now, and what his universal work did, you'll see 80% of it has to do with how you live your life and how you treat other people. I mean, this sounds too commonsensical, but you'll see, in fact, what in a bit, you'll see what Adi has to say about what Baba's message was. So the idea now is not to ascend individually on your way to the higher planes, which Baba in this incarnation did not encourage. You're not a big plane guy. No, he's a home run avatar. He says, man, I'm giving you a break, I'm bailing you. Yeah. I mean, this could be a group of, there's every chance that you people are on higher planes.
Oh, I know.
You know that? Maybe not, then. But Baba said you can't know that because the game is here. And so he is asking his lovers to be, if you will, role models for the new humanity, which is all about harmony, unity. You read what he says about it. The new humanity is all about brotherhood, it's peace, it's love, it's equality. It's, we gave a talk in Myrtle Beach called Meher Baba, Avatar of Social Work. That divinity is now bringing down his higher energy and transmuting, transfiguring not only your own consciousness but everyone else's. And so I think the story that will be told of Baba's last days and of Baba's statements in the last decade of his incarnation will be very, very decisive. And it's going to be able to meld with the best theological traditions of all existing religions. And that the specialness of folks following Meher Baba is not their spiritual advancement. God knows. But it is the possibility, despite our weird personalities, of helping him channel that divine energy to divinize the earth through love.
Yes.
And connect in that way with Baba. So it's not that we are, certainly, Lord knows we're not better than any other spiritual students of other systems. But it does mean that Baba, as the Chief Executive Officer of the universe, does have a labor shortage problem. And the spiritual hierarchy is using every erg of energy, which comes even through things as simple as saying his name, remembering him, saying the prayers. All of that liberates energy. It also burns off our individual samskaras, which is a bonus for extra effort. And so when Baba was able to drop the body, it's not that he inevitably had to. It's that he was able to because his work had been done. And now It was the interconnection. It was the divine connection that was going to be important. There was no longer to be the separation between his lovers and himself. There was no longer an externalization, no matter how sophisticated one was as a Baba lover. When Baba was in the body, it was me and him. It was very hard. It was extremely important to be able to focus on Meher Baba as the central divine energy point of the universe. But there was still separation. And what he was able to do by dropping his body is to drop that separation. And he would do it in subtle ways, sometimes by when people came to him and said, Baba, I want to leave my family and my job, I want to join you in the ashram. What did he say? He said, well, who do you think I am? And, well, Baba, you're God. And where is God? And well, God's everywhere. Baba was not in Detroit. Just back there, you know. Fill your world with responsibilities. Let's get on with the new humanity. And with that, let's take a break. Thing is, the interview we did with Mandalay was not shown for 30 years. There's an embarrassing reason for that. Rick and I had 2 tape recorders. They were running at different speeds. It was impossible to sync the sound with the picture until the technology caught up with it. And it was finally possible to do that. The other thing is, I did find out the origin of the mystery of Adi's phone call. It was kind of botched, miscommunication of a good sort. It turned out, I found out in Australia, somebody had actually known what happened, that there was a point at which early on, Don Stevens had come fairly quickly, and he asked Erich if there's anything he could do for him. And one of the things Erich says, we can't get Allan Cohen over here to see about this body. And so Don must have said something to Adi. Adi must have assumed that I probably knew about it. So he called to say, I'm apprised of visa status. I didn't find that out until a couple of years ago. So that's at least one mystery that got solved. I think we have to do a few minutes before silence, and I wonder if there's anything anybody would like to discuss further or offer observations.
3 minutes, right?
3 minutes?
10:30. No, 10:30.
Okay, yes, go ahead.
How did you feel when you were in the two, when you were there?
What we were, by the way, I guess I wanted to say, we were sitting on the edge of the crypt. That's where we sat. So where the men were walking around. Well, it was magical in a way you can imagine. You saw the botchings going on. There were people coming by. The guides were moving them along really quickly. The fragrance, the spiritual fragrance was very, very high. You saw Adelia with the little paint duster who took turns doing that. As I said, Erich took very, very good care of Baba's body. And so it was just an ongoing total immersion in kind of timeless moments. I think the fact that the interesting part, I think, was that for the Westerners particularly, and the Mondling set you saw when they had their deep touching moments, was the kind of the norm, the value was to keep your head together. It was to kind of act as if Baba was there. And to be very responsive to what the Mandali needed. And also get glimpses at a wide range of the intensity of the love that particularly Indian lovers had. I mean, I remember once this group from Andhra came in to sing at they were literally in rags. And they were just singing the bhajans with all their heart. It was very, very powerful. And then Hoshang Barucha, as I said, told jokes. And at first it seemed a little strange. We weren't laughing, but by the end, his jokes got better and better. And I think you couldn't. I don't think that really there are words for that kind of experience. Because when you're talking about the silence, even if you ask somebody to describe their experience of music, it begins to get hard, right? Well, this is that squared, relatively impossible. But so certainly, to say it was unforgettable is probably a mild version of it. Yes.
Did the feeling of being at Baba's entombment carry over to the last darshan for those months in between?
Yes, but there was a lot of planning going on to go to darshan. I think the Californians kind of went very closely together, as I remember, in terms of the weeks of the darshan. And there was a lot to arrange. There was a lot of communication with the Mongoli, a lot of logistics. And I remember I was a team leader for about 30 of our companions from Northern California. And it had every facet of the usual Baba experience, including craziness. When we arrived, for example, I was negotiating with the hotel keeper as to the rooming assignments. The man said, I said, okay, all right, what if we do this and that? He kept saying, I said, what's wrong with him? I gave him every possible combination, he wouldn't go for it. So I finally said to one of the Indian guys, what am I going to do with this hotel keeper? I can't satisfy him. And the Indian says, actually, he said yes to everything. He was going, did I feel bad about that? And he was going, this crazy American. I'm like, what's wrong with it? So a lot of people had very intense experiences at the darshan as well. I think those reported seeing Baba there sitting in his chair. Once it was known that Baba was going to have the darshan reclining and he intended it, it was very, very strong, very, very present. I remember feeling very, very good at one point, lying on the floor in Guru Prasad, being very happy, taking in everything, till Dr. Goher came by and said, Cohen, what are you doing? I'm just lying on the floor, just appreciating everything. He says, this man is dehydrated. Get him out of here. Give him salt and water. Oh, really? That's cool. You know, I was go on. Totally. So it was. It did became. I mean, I was very happy to see the tomb again, certainly, and. But you know, the last trip to India, it was clear that it was going to be tough to get into the tomb. And my creds weren't good enough at that point. We'll maybe try it the 50th anniversary. So it continued. I think, we lost a few Baba lovers after Baba got the body. We didn't lose them really, but they kind of lost interest. But it really, when the Mongoli were really very, very stunned at the devotion and the commitment of the Western Baba lovers. They said, I don't know how they could do it. They never met him. We could not have done that. We could not have been that devoted to Baba without our experience. So whenever people came, I missed them, I could have gone, I should have somehow gotten to India early, I should have disobeyed, Baba and broke his seclusion. But the Mongolians said, no, this is what we honored this more than anything, that you were able to do that. And the lovers could do that without having seen or been in his presence. And that was, I think, a very, very strong message that they had underscored the kind of eternal, omnipresent aspect of the avatar. It was really, really very, very strong, very powerful. So we continued, incidentally, we continued the drug work for quite a while intensively. And it was very clear that Baba still had his hand in it. It wasn't just on faith. The kind of miraculous things kept happening. Probably one of the most dramatic. And again, you know, some of the old-time Baba lovers think that Baba's giving credit for too much. You know, like, Baba wants me to have kale. Or something like that. I'm not sure about that. But in other respects, when he wants to get work done, or when he wants to make a contact with somebody, he gets very forceful. Well, this is after he dropped the body. So I'm doing a TV show in Chicago, and we had a plan. This was another show of an interviewer that was nasty to guess. That was our specialty. Nobody else would do it. And it was being taped for a show later that night. And the ostensible kicker was the whole LSD thing. But it was an audience, too, a smaller audience. And our plan was that certain people would have posters of Baba's face under their trench coats. And that when the camera panned the audience, they'd flash. So that was the plot, because I didn't think I was going to get a chance. I might be able to get a chance to mention Baba's name, but it would have to be snuck in. So we had, it was about a 6-minute interview. And I think we succeeded in flashing the camera. So I was very pleased. And I walked off the set. And at that time, I would always carry a film of Baba with me just in case. So the host, who was usually very nasty, he wasn't that nasty with us. Mildly pleasant. Off camera. And he said, he says, by the way, I'm sorry, I know you brought a film tonight, but we really didn't have time to show it. I said, I'm thinking he's never going to show it from Baba anyway. And it's fine, it's great, because I think the flashing had worked. I was very happy with it. He says, no, we didn't have time. I said, that's fine, no problem. So I'm walking out into the audience and meeting of companions, and he follows me. He says, really, Dr. Cohen, we didn't have time to show that film. I said, fine, that's fine. It's really okay. No problem. And we go outside on the street. He follows us outside. And he grabs me by the shoulder and says, we really did not have time. We didn't. You come back and talk to the director. He'll tell you we didn't have time. I said, really? If you want me to go back, that's fine, but it's not a problem. So we go back, and he talks to them. He said, Ron, we didn't have time to show Dr. Cohen's film, right? Ron said, well, we had an extra 45 seconds, but the band took it up. And he says, we gotta reshoot it. We have to reshoot it. John, it's a union band. They've, they packed up. We don't retape. We don't retape. You must retape it. He went totally berserk, and he forced the band to come back. he forced to reshoot the 45 seconds of the Baba film. I struggled to find a segue from the old interview to the new one. Oh, by the way, they think this way in India too. Here's the avatar. And that show then was taped and shown. I then asked the technical crews, does he do this often? They were pale. This is totally unprecedented. He's never like this. You don't do that. You never retape a show this much. We don't understand what got over him. And of course, it wasn't too long from then when we found out that a few people had seen Baba for the first time and clicked on it. So he would do, I mean, you can't nobody could explain that happening in any other way. So it was very clear that there really wasn't, there was continuity between Baba's presence when he was in the body and when he wasn't. And in fact, in a certain sense, he took more chances afterwards. So the Avatar wasn't a big chance, but he kind of pushed it. By the time, around the time he dropped the body, it was very clear, his messages, as you kind of heard, in the early days were more congratulating us for educating the young people about drugs, etc. And as things went on, it moved much more towards spreading his message of love and truth. It was a time when he really wanted his name out. That the LA program with Joe Pine, for example, we computed, we looked at the ratings. You get about 50 million people in the United States and Canada. It was syndicated a lot, and they showed it a lot of times. And so he got pretty good PR, or at least introduction. And then, you know, the posters started to come out, the Baba posters. And we did crazy things like put billboards up on the Golden Gate Bridge. The Oakland Bay Bridge, actually. But then the other gurus started to come. We couldn't have our Baba buttons much anymore because people say, oh, that's Swami Sivananda or whatever. We did, remember Sam, who was the guru who had the party, the Baba party? Remember in Ojai, we were a little surprised?
Not Krishna Murti.
No, it was not Krishna Murti, it was... Muktananda.
Oh, yeah.
Muktananda. Sam can tell that story, and I'll embellish it. A couple of things happened that in retrospect demonstrated what Baba had been able to do that we didn't know about. This is I think it was, I forget what it was, but it was around Baba's birthday. And I remember somebody coming up to you, Sam, and saying, you had a really good party down in Ojai.
Oh,
you know, Baba birthday party, right?
Yeah, actually, I think it was in LA, but same idea.
Yeah.
It's a group of, it's called Heartlight. They're
Are we
meditators.
going to have silence in about 60
Oh,
seconds?
It's now. It's
Oh,
now.
sorry.
I've been signaling.
All right.
It's now.
Okay, it's silence.
Avatar.
Avatar.
Jay.
Jay.